kids that come from our backgrounds, the kids today don't think that there are any ways out. I think that
Can you
box
say
is
that one
even
more
more
time, Jerry?
narrow. I'm
Forgive me for
sorry.
interrupting. Say that again. Kids from what?
Kids from our backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
right? Kids from our backgrounds. I think that when I was a kid, it was the American dream, right? I knew that if I worked hard, I was going to be better. I was going to make it out. Now, I didn't know what make it out looks like,
Right.
but it was make it out for me was a full-time job and a place to live. That's
Right.
making it out. Okay. I always say, what's my greatest achievement? My 3 children graduated from high school.
Wow.
That's my greatest achievement. Of all the things, if I'll ever do that I could hang my hat on, good or bad, the greatest achievement was my 3 children who moved to Tennessee with me 5 years ago from Oregon, who work. I see them almost every day. They're in the mid-20s, and they're the greatest achievement of my life because I broke institutional generational poverty.
Whoa.
I broke it. But to kids today, even though the opportunities are massive, I think, to use your point, Kessie, the box is even more narrow, is what they're taught, is what they're told. There's no options. The man's out to steal from us. I can't get anywhere. And there's more opportunity than there has ever been. And yet, in our mind, what we're being told so that we stay under that thumb is there is nothing for you. You can't do anything. Everything is everybody else's fault. And it goes against that 14-year-old beaten down Jerry standing on that curb.
Right.
Having that voice tell him something completely different.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on our amazing podcast. Today, we have Jerry Brazie and AJ Donaldson from the Epic Foundation. And today, we are going to be rapid firing questions at Jerry. He's going to tell us about his business, how he started his entrepreneurial journey, and everything in between. Jerry, thank you for coming on today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Awesome. So I know I just threw AJ into the mix. I know you had some questions for Jerry. Do you want to start off and ask those questions?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so, and thank you for that, Kessie. Jerry, when Kessie beautifully orchestrated and engineered bringing us together in her mind and her automation and her skill set through relationships, she was saying, you two absolutely need to meet because there's a lot of alignment. So I would immediately ask, like, what mission are you on that's really driving you?
Let me tell you, I think that, again, I have family and I have things that I'm interested in and I have business that I'm involved in. And so you have those day to day. But if I was to, 2 things that probably if I could stop doing everything and just go to work on these things, these are the things that I would do. We'll call them my passion projects. I always say, I don't encourage anybody to do what they're passionate about for a living. Figure out what you're good at, learn how to sell that into the market. And then whatever you can make off of that, take that and go follow your passion because you're going to have a lot more success that way, I think. So in that context, I work very passionately on things that I can then take and go kind of put towards those things that I'm passionate about. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about, number one, is health. In the last 3 years, I've lost 100 pounds. I've kicked opioids after 20 years. I had a significant heart issue 4 years ago, and I just decided it was time to live. I was dying, so I'm super involved in and encouraging as many people as I can about their health. So that's number 2. But the primary thing, that the message I try to get out is I come from nothing. I'm a poor kid, abject poverty, stole food as a kid to eat. Me and my 20-month younger little brother, 8 brothers and sisters. I was number 7. My mother and dad, my mother had 6 kids when she was 23 years old. She took a bus to have the 6th kid to the hospital, took a bus home, and walked in the door with an infant and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other children.
Wow.
6 kids less than a year apart. And so slept every other day. My dad was gone, so she slept every other day. And, cloth diapers, no money, no washer, dryer, none of those things. And so, like I said, for a decade, she slept every other day. So I know what hard work looks like, but I know what struggle looks like. I've been stabbed and beaten and shot at, and, I just had that life. But when I was 11 years old, I went to work. Somebody hired me. I paid taxes as an 11-year-old, if you can believe.
Wow.
Yes, sir. And I've never not paid taxes, meaning I've never not had a job in any year since 1980. And so for me, the first meal I ever ate in a restaurant is the one they gave me at the end of the day. So I was like, man, I'd have worked for free for that meal because I'm stealing food with my little brother until that point.
Right.
And so at 11 years old, I was like, I'm working forever because this is the greatest thing. And so I was able to combine food with work and food together. And so throughout my life, that's really been a driver for me as I made those connections. And along the way, I was able to drag myself. All my friends are prison and drugs. And again, like I said, I've seen 3-4 murders. I've seen half a dozen suicides. I've seen my 100 fights. And when I was 17 years old, I was a street kid living with hookers and heroin addicts in a $25 a week flop house, still getting up in the morning and going to work. Dropped out of high school at 16 years old and just on the streets, trying to make a living. And so my message, I'll jump ahead, 28 years old, I started my first company. It failed. I started my second company at 29. By year 4, we were doing $14 million in revenue every year. I was a millionaire at 33, and I've gone on. My companies have bought and sold a dozen of them and have done hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. I have failed spectacularly. I have lost millions of dollars, and I have made millions of dollars. So I've had this experience from, like I said, being robbed and stabbed as a 17, 18-year-old to the world that I live in now. And so the long-winded way to answer your question, my friend, is to say that I want to encourage other people in that quick little 5-minute background I just gave you of mine, that it's not the end of the world to grow up in that world, and that you can get out and you can make it. And if I could spread that message to as many people as I can, as humbly as I can, I never forget where I come from, ever. I have a huge ego, but I temper that huge ego with a big dash of humility and humbleness. I have friends that don't let me forget where I come from, but I know I have a great perspective, which I think is a superpower for escaping where I started and getting where I am, because I never forget where I come from. I never forget what it's like to be hungry. Nothing can hurt me because I've been poor. I've been super poor, right? I know what it's. I drug a 10-inch screwdriver out of my back, laying in a bathtub on a Friday night, Saturday morning after I got mugged in a alleyway. I know what struggle is like. And compared to that, my life over the last 25, 30 years has, been relatively simple, even though it's as complicated as it is. So that's kind of my message. That's what I want to get out there, is just people to hear, I'm nothing special. I'm just an idiot from the streets, right? But I know how to work. And knowing how to work at 11 years old and never not having a job. I've had a full-time job since I was 16, never not having a job really translated into all of these opportunities that I was able to get out there and take advantage of, risk everything on multiple times, work like no human being you've ever met. I've never missed a day of work. I'm 55 years old. I've never missed. I'm not that I've never not been sick. I've just never missed a day of work, because work is food. So when work is food, you go to work.
You go to work.
Yes,
so
sir.
Profound. And I appreciate it. You can tell, Kessie, this is not Jerry's first time with the microphone, the headphones. I mean, dude, the ability to articulate that mission and what you endured, right? And when I hear immediately, like, it didn't happen to you, it happened for you.
Yes.
Those who are listening to this podcast should be encouraged, because one, some of the kids that are from different neighborhoods that may not be or look like Destin, Florida, we need to understand that poverty doesn't have a color.
That's right.
Right. Living in a capitalist society, there really is only one color. As much as there's hate in the world, there's only one color that really matters in this country, and it's green. And the dynamics of being able to provide for yourself and your family, the fact that from 11 years old, the dynamics of having a mother, an absent father, a lot of what you shared absolutely resonates with me. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this right now, where maybe they have never openly spoken up and about it and have been silent to the pain. And you have taken that pain and turned it into purpose, brother. So I commend you for letting your life be an example, right? And not falling victim or into victimization, but letting that pick you up and drive you forward to help the next generation. So, brother, I commend you.
No, I appreciate it. Let me tell you a story right along those lines. I'm 14 years old, and back in the day, this has been 1983, I got a bank card. Now, in today's world, that's no big deal. But if you got anything, when you're a poor kid from the streets and you get anything with your name on it at that age, Remember when I got my library card, which to me
Right.
was magical that there was even such a thing as a library. I had no phones, right? We had no radios. I mean, again, this is abject poverty. And so I went to the bank. I worked full time. I went to the bank. In those days, you had to leave $5. I don't know if you have to do that anymore, but you had to leave $5 in the bank, and I took 80 out. Well, I didn't catch the 4 guys behind me. Southeast Portland is where I lived at the time. I'm 14 years old, and they catch me at the bus stop, and they put it to me pretty good. Pretty good. Broke 2 ribs, broke my nose, damn near killed me. Roll me under a bus stop. Take my wallet, take everything I have, and off they go. And I wake up. And I roll out from under the bus. It's August, hot as can be outside. And I roll out, and I got blood down my front. Both eyes are black. Nobody cares. Different world in those times, right? I get on the bus. I have 2 buses to get home and about a 2-mile walk. And I get off the first bus, and I pass out underneath a tree, right? Because, I'm this close to dying, but there's no hospitals in my world. You just kind of make your way. I wake up. It's starting to get dark, and I go down. And I get on the second bus, and I jump off, and now I have a 2-mile walk. Now, I have business back in Portland, Oregon. I live in Tennessee. I go once a month for a week. Every third trip, I go to this square. The sidewalk is still there, going up over the interstate freeway, where this epiphany hit me that changed my life. Didn't change my life right away, but it changed my life relative to all of my friends and relative to all of my brothers and sisters and everything that was happening around me. Because, when you grow up in poverty, it's everywhere. All you see is struggle. All you see is poverty. This is all you see. You see behavior that is redundant. Yep. And as I stopped on this square, this is true story on my children's eyes. I've told this story 100 times. To my right and behind me, a voice stopped me, a female voice. I thought it was somebody in the quadplex right to my right. It wasn't. It was a voice, and the voice said to me at 14 years old, beaten the way I was, everything is your fault. I stopped.
Wow.
AJ and Casey, I stopped, and I said, there's nothing there, but I talked back to it. I remember very clearly. I said, what do you mean nothing's my fault? I didn't do anything. I'm not responsible for this. Everything is your fault. You're going to be like everyone else if you continue to blame everybody else.
Whoa.
And it said one more thing. It said, there's no one waiting for you at home. You are on your own. Do it yourself or you're going to fail.
Right.
That's it. Now, I heard it, understood it. I had to finish walking home. Conversely, I have a big nub on my nose. For the next 3 days, I sat, my nose split on top where they broke my nose, and I sat for 3 days, and I just held it shut. And then on the third day, it quit opening, so I let go of it. And
Whoa.
I have a nub. But, that. I don't know if it was God talking to me. I don't know if it was Jiminy Cricket. I don't know if it's my conscience. I don't know if the fact that I was beaten the way that I was, that, again, my mind was opening to accepting other things. I didn't have a pastor, a preacher. I didn't have a counselor. I didn't have somebody telling me any of this. It just came to me in this voice, that epiphany. And what I say to that is that it like a stone on a pond. I didn't go under. Everybody around me goes under. You stay above for so long, sooner or later you get in trouble and you go on. And I did not get in trouble. I got in trouble, but there were times when that epiphany stopped me from doing things that I otherwise would have done. That kept my stone above the pond. And ultimately, over the course of years, over the course of a decade and a half, I started to rise. It wasn't a hockey stick, but I started to make different decisions than all of the people around me. So that when at 28 years old, I was confronted with these opportunities, I was in a position to try to take advantage of them and see if I couldn't better myself. And I point all of that to that epiphany after that beating that I took, probably one of the lowest points in my life, broke 2 ribs, damn near killed me, like I said. But I am who I am because of where I come from, and also in spite of where I come from. It's both things together. So you can be something coming from where we come from because of that, right? The hardship and the survival pushes you to do great things. But also we like to complain and say that if not for, I would have. If not for this thing, I would have been this great thing. And I never played by that game. I said, because of that and in spite of that, I am who I am.
So here's a question for you, Jerry, because that is tremendous. It's absolutely profound. Absolutely profound. And to come from that 11-year-old who started work and despite where you are coming from, to be the man that you are today, 55 years old, your children, someone who has seen millions of dollars funnel through right? And so forth. You are on a mission, right? To help other people. And hearing you right now and all the things you do day to day and spending the time you're spending, the resources you're spending on this mission, what does it look like? Like, what does the future look like if you are able to accomplish like even a portion of this mission when it comes to the people that you're impacting? What does it look like then?
You know, I'd like to say that that at some point I struggle with the money side of things, and I'll tell you why. About 15 years ago, I said Christmas to me as a kid was huge. We got sugar cereal wrapped in a box or wrapped in paper, right?
Right.
So you got pajamas and you got sugar cereal. I knew what I was getting every year, and we'd get under the tree and we'd shake those boxes trying to figure out what sugar cereal we were getting. Now, me and my little brother had to go hide it because, again, I have 6 older brothers and sisters, and my older brothers were 10 years older than me. They'd steal it, eat the whole box. So we'd have to squirrel it away or eat the whole box ourselves. But I remember the magic of Christmas. You know, I mean, it's just a highlight of my childhood was Christmas. I never got anything, but it was the magic of what might happen, of what could be. And so Christmas to me is very important today. I have these traditions that me and my family do. And I really had a calling that I wanted to try to help kids at Christmas. This is about 15 years ago. I was doing very well and I wanted to reach out. And so I reached out to a company. This was in Portland, Oregon. And I said, find me some families that I can go and help, but I want to meet them. Yeah. And so they did. And we met them, and I met all 4 of them. And 3 of the 4, the fathers, were sitting at home playing video games in the middle of the day when I showed up.
Wow.
So I struggle with helping monetarily, having been through that experience, because I don't want to help anybody who doesn't help themselves. Now that could be right or wrong. And I freely admit that there may be a better way to approach this, but just internally for me, the example I try to set is I'm happy to help as long as you help. I help people in business. I'm helping a guy that's 350 pounds and dying of diabetes right now. I've spent 500 texts in I don't know how many hours, completely free. I do a TikTok video. I just tell people to call me. I'll help you whatever I can, because, you know, I've got my health back and it's changed my life. What can I do to help you get your health back? I mean, this would cost thousands of dollars. I don't want any money for it. I just want to help. I help businesses buy and sell all the time. I consult. I talk with young kids just as much as I can. I just want to help, but I only want to help those that help themselves. Yesterday, I had it out with this guy that's losing the weight because he wants to quit. And I said, I'm out. I'm not going to help you if you're not going to help yourself. So in the context of that story, I'm trying to figure out how exactly I can be most effective. Right. That doesn't necessarily require me to get jaded by giving money away that I think is going to get flushed down a toilet or not appreciated. And, you know, someone at home with kids to feed, and if you're at home, something's wrong.
You said something. Sorry, Kessie.
No. Go.
Okay, no. So you said some earlier. So even if I wanted to stay there for a minute, Kessie, and run with me here, because, you know, Jerry is pouring, and the fact that you have so much heart to pour out for the next generation, especially to your point, you know, the trauma of like having to give funding to people who aren't necessarily looking to help themselves.
Right.
You said something earlier that I wanted to lean into. You mentioned before hearing that voice, you mentioned getting beat up. You know, maybe even within, you know, to the point of them taking everything you had. You said they took everything I had. And there was something I had to share with you from my heart to yours, brother, because like they took everything that you had on this earth that you wouldn't have been able to take with you if they had taken your life.
Yes.
It's one thing they didn't take from you. That's one thing you had. And to go from the fact that you still had your life and to hear that voice of conviction, wherever it was coming from, to then still be present so many years later to pay it forward to the next generation. I immediately think of that little Jerry at 11 years old, at 11 years old, who had the 6 brothers and sisters as his mother was pregnant again, going to a hospital with no father around, where there could have been a Jerry who says, why would I help that? Why do you keep getting pregnant?
Wow.
Right?
Right.
In fact, your mission now to be what you did not have.
Yes. Right.
You are that. You became that. Right? And there's so many who have already been impacted and who will be impacted. So a question I have for you, because I heard consulting, I hear coaching, I hear some amazing things that you're doing for people, not even just the youth, but people, what else? What's the platform? Is it that you're coaching? Is it that it's health and wellness? I hear the wellness aspect of it all, but what's the model, if I may? Like, what's the thing that's working for you right now?
I'll tell you what. So I have my base businesses. I have development. I have a big development, 38 lot subdivision in Portland. I have an operating company that's been operating in Oregon, Washington, Idaho for 25 years. I've bought and sold a dozen businesses, as I said, over the last 25, 30 years. And so at the base of it, back to my whole what you're good at so that you can then take that money and go do your passion. That's the program I have. So right now I'm doing these things that earn me my living. And then beyond earning my living is really where I'm trying to figure out what the next step is. So as an example, I've been helping businesses for years and years and years. And I get the same way I've been helping people with their health, but I get a little jaded because they're not me, right? They don't take it the same way. They get all kinds of help, but they don't seem to take it. And a buddy of mine said, "You're an idiot. You need to start charging." And I thought,
that sounds familiar. Yeah.
I thought, you know what? That's right. I struggle with it though, because again, I'm that kid from the street. So along the way, I want to be that guy that maybe someone remembers 10, 15 years down the line that this guy stopped and helped me and gave me some assistance, and it didn't take right away, but 10 or 15 years later, I'm in an opportunity to pay something like that back, right? I struggle against charging for things that come from my heart, because it kind of juxtaposes against that background that I had growing up. Right. But I'm over that now. I just started a new company called the Kronos Group, Kronos, the Kronos Group. And it's going to be there's a Facebook page, the Kronos Group on Facebook. And it really is kind of a group for I'm going to put a mastermind group together. It's my consulting business. The Facebook group is free. So anybody can go and become a member. And it's just my daily musings about life and what's happening in business and where I see the economy going and where I see things happening and my opinions about all sorts of different things. It's brand new. It's 250 members. I mean, literally, it's brand new. And I'd like to see it get to where it's a community and we can communicate on a daily basis. But then from a business perspective, I'll have a mastermind group. I joined a kind of a CEO group, mastermind group at 29 years old. It was one of the first things I did after I started my business. And it was one of the best things I ever did. Finding a mentor, in this case, a group of business owners that were in their 50s and I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I just sat and listened for years and years. I mean, I didn't have much. I had the biggest company in the group and I didn't say anything for 2.5 years. And I just learned, and I was able to jump over so many impediments in life and in business because I learned from these guys. Well, now I'm the 55-year-old. We're getting together next month. As a matter of fact, everybody's still alive. They're all in their 70s and early 80s. We're getting together next month to kind of go through and see how everybody's doing. We haven't seen each other in a year, but the point being, now I want to do that same thing. There was a chairman of the group. There's 9 of us. You get a half an hour in the morning. Everybody gets to kind of bounce life off of each other, be it business or be it home. It didn't matter what it was, very intimate. And you get to know each other very well. That mentorship to me was probably the most valuable thing I've ever had. Right. Because while I paid $500 a month for it or whatever it was, the benefit to it is it's incalculable. And so I joined that group at 29 years old, and that really set the stage for me. And so I want to do that. I've been trying to do that same thing. Now I'm formalizing it. I'm going to put it together as a business and run with it. And then from that, I've reached out to the local community here in Nashville. I haven't made very many connections yet, but I will, to try to get out there and see what I can do for the kids, for the youths, right? And you hit it on the head. And I think it's an important point. I grew up in the inner part of Portland, Oregon, and my life was surrounded by people I went to the toughest school in the city. I saw a kid get murdered 25 feet in front of me when I was a sophomore in high school. They put yellow tape around it and we all went back to school.
Right.
Right. It's a different world I grew up in. And guess what that school had in common? Nothing. Everybody was the same, different color. Everyone was poor. Right. Didn't matter. We all had the same struggles. We all came from the same places. We all had the same issues walking home and walking to school. We had the same problems at school. Everybody had the same problems. And so I look at it and go, it doesn't matter where you come from or who you are. From my perspective, my personality and the way that you approach the things that happen to you in life will dictate for you how far you go. To your point, when I was laying underneath that bench, I never thought, poor me. I just got up.
Right.
That's called that's called, I don't remember what day that one was on, but it's called a Tuesday in my life at 14 years old, right? Oh no,
Right.
I got beat again. This time was pretty bad, and I lost everything. But okay, tomorrow I got to get up. I got stabbed when I was 19 years old with a 10-inch screwdriver. They tried to mug me it took some money off some guys in a pool game. Made a mistake, went out the back door. They got me. I spent the overnight pulling that screwdriver out of my back. It's stuck in the muscle. They're going for my liver. Here's a great story. I'm sorry, guys. I'm rattling on.
No. It's
when
powerful.
When I was 13 years old, my older sister, she was 7 years older than me, died on her 21st birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 months later, I got a virus that ate my right retina. So I had 20/20 vision. All of a sudden, I go blind. And then I went to 22/50 in my left eye. I couldn't see anything. Happened in a couple of months. So I get laser surgery at the hospital. It was, just an event. And so now I can't see. I have all of these issues, 14 years old. So I learned to adapt like anything else, and life goes on. Now I'm 19 years old. I go out the back door of this bowling alley pool hall. These guys catch me. One follows me. One gets me in front. I get in the middle of it. The guy stabs me from behind, but I hear him coming. Guy in front of me, big guy in front of me, small guy behind me. I got to deal with the big guy in front of me. I hear him coming, and I turn, and rather than turn to the side that I can see out of, right, I turn to my left because I can't see out of my right eye. And I would have turned that way. So, but for the grace of God, I turned to my left because I'm blind in my right eye. This has been 5 years I've been blind. And as I turned to my left, he was going to put that 10-inch screwdriver. In those days, you'd carry a 10-inch screwdriver. You'd shave it down. So if the cops pulled you over, you didn't have a weapon. You just had a screwdriver. And he went to shove it into my liver in this alleyway, but I turned to my left. And instead of going in my liver, it went in my back and came out my side, and it stuck in the muscle. Not a lot of blood, right? Missed me by a mile. He couldn't get it out, as a matter of fact. And that gave me some control because he couldn't pull it out. I didn't understand at the time I'd even been stabbed, right? I just had this guy messing with me. Well, so I get out of that, and I drive this crappy car that I have to this little tiny apartment I was living in. That's just a complete, tiny little rat infested place. And I lay in this Friday night, Saturday morning, I lay in the bathtub. I fill it full of warm water. I should have done cold water, but I fill it full of warm water. And I spent the screwdriver's facing away from me in my back. And so with my left hand, I spent 6 hours slowly yanking it out, right? Until I, almost pass out. I'm laying in this pool of blood, but it wasn't bleeding terribly. I'm smart enough to know I wasn't in any trouble. And ultimately I got it out. I wrapped the only towel I had around it. And Monday morning I worked at a place called Macadam Carpet Warehouse, taking carpet down and cutting it. And I was at work Monday morning. So those experiences at 14 years old and at 11 years old and at 15 years old, and all of those experiences to me to me meant I get stabbed on Friday. I go to work on Monday. That's the world that I lived in. And that work ethic, though, is what helped me escape from that world that I lived in. I have zero education. I bought a house at 20 years old. I didn't know what a mortgage was. I didn't know what an interest rate was.
Wow.
I paid 12.5% on $82,000 house at 20 years old, just because I had read an article about buying a house. I didn't know what an interest rate was or a mortgage rate was.
Wow. Dude, this is like Kessie. This is there should be a movie written. In fact, I believe there's a few movies written about this guy.
Right?
Already.
Listen, I'm sitting down here and I'm absorbing all of this, and there's so much to unpack. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the first time we met, Jerry, I said it. I was like, listen, whatever I do, I have to get you in front of people that this can help. Like, outside of this podcast, there's so many kids that we work with between AJ and myself that I feel like this would impact on so many levels,
Yeah.
When we feel like we're the victim, we sit and wallow in that feeling, that emotion. But the fact that you got stabbed and got up or pulled this screwdriver out and was like, oh, well, work on Monday, it's insane.
I got to eat.
I think about it, and I'm like, is it that we're just not going through enough in our lives? where we sit there and we complain about the simplest of issues? Is it that? I mean,
we live in the greatest time to be alive. When I was, by any stretch of the imagination, today is the best day to be alive by a large margin. And yet more kids are addicted to drugs and
Yep.
alcohol,
Yep.
are
Yep.
on pharmaceuticals, right? Are depressed, are anxious. And someone like me, and this is where I think, back to your question, AJ, I struggle with the message and exactly how to get it out there, because I have no sympathy. I have no empathy, right? We are all responsible for ourselves. And the world today, I mean, think about, to be an extraordinary employee, and I've had 10,000 employees in my life. To be an extraordinary employee, you just have to be average. Just show up to work every day, and you
Wow.
are extraordinary today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot to be
It's absolutely true.
extraordinary.
Tremendous
right?
opportunity. Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we all want something for nothing. I'll tell you another story. I took a job as an at a messenger company, driving. I had all kinds of jobs. I quit one job because another job would pay me more money, and I would just go give 2 weeks and go to the next job and go to the next job and go to the next job. So I had 20, 25 jobs in my lifetime. And I took a job driving. I was in my early 20s. I enjoyed it. About 6, 7 months into it, they had a dispatcher. She wasn't very good. And I figured this out really quick. And so I went to the owner of the company. The company at the time was doing about $1.5 million, had 35 drivers. And I went to the owner and I said, I guess you're paying that woman probably 40 grand. Now, appreciate the job I had before. I made $11 an hour. And I could tell you today exactly how to live on $11 an hour. I had $11 an hour was magic to me. It was unimaginable money to be making 11. And now I'm sitting down talking to this woman about $40,000. I might as well have been 4 million. And I said, I think I can do a better job. And she said, well, she's been here a long time. I said, I'm not done. You pay me. Now this is in a 10, 11 hour a day job, dispatching orders out, no technology, over the radio, stuff coming at you all day long. And you just sit there and take it. I said, I'll do it for $10 an hour. And you don't need your second dispatcher. I'll cover his shift too. So it was a 12-hour day. I said, I'll do it for $10 an hour. But at the end of 6 months, if I do a better job than she does, you pay me her salary. And the lady's like, what do I got to lose? They moved her into the office, and I took that company. I ended up managing that company, and I took it to $5 million on 105 employees before I went and started my own. I spent 6 months at $10 an hour, where the woman before me was making 40 grand a year, and I was happy to do it. I took that and I said, you watch, I'm going to show you what I can do. You don't owe me, I owe you. And so because you're paying me, I'm going to do this job, but we have an agreement. And so if I fulfill my agreement, I'm going to go, you're going to do what you said you're going to do, and I'm going to do what I said I would do. Now, if she had kicked me out, I'd have gone and gotten another job. What a great experience. I ran this company. I helped her grow. I showed her how to do it. She could have shot me in the back and kicked me out the door and put the other woman in charge, and she'd been none the worse for wear. But she didn't, because she saw what she had. So I invested in myself at $10 an hour, didn't complain, didn't whine, happy to do it because I was working towards something else. And too often we want it all now, or we're worried about what the people around us are doing and not concerned about what we're doing.
Dude, so Kessie, thank you for that. That was a great gateway. Because a lot of what you said resonates. Kessie would know this firsthand and why she brought us together brilliantly. And thank you for that, Kessie.
You're welcome.
If I may, just for the sake of time, because right now Kessie knows, because my passion gets triggered, Jerry, I would match and mirror, and you and I would be on a call for the next 3 hours, right?
I love it. Yeah.
And I'm down for it. There's definitely a future here that I want to unpack and I want to step into. Jerry, do you mind if I kind of share a little bit about myself and what, I believe Kessie, why she sees alignment?
No, please. And I should say that I do these podcasts, and you guys should know that I am super uncomfortable talking about myself.
Really?
It's only in the last 5 years have I started telling any stories or talking about it all. So to your point, I'd much rather hear, I'm much more impressed with whatever you're about to tell me than anything I have told you, because I'm an idiot kid from the street.
Well, dude, I appreciate that, because we're cut from the same cloth in that respect, and being from the streets and the dynamics of our background. And I wanted to acknowledge you because there's something that was resonating in my mind as you were speaking. And I want to acknowledge, obviously, Kessie, and provided this platform in of itself so that we can meet, have this conversation. I thought it was a brilliant idea to actually be able to say, why don't we capture the conversation instead of just having a meeting on Zoom?
Perfect.
Put it on the podcast so she could chop it up and do all the things. There's so much content. I can already see her wheels turning.
Oh, you know.
This podcast is going to turn into like 30 podcasts. So she's capturing all this content and she will do what she do. There were two things, and I want to acknowledge two mentors of mine. And when you talked about mentorship, and I felt, and I know Kessie can acknowledge this as well, and it would relate to this, but I felt your energy shift when you talked about that group at 28, 29 years old of adults that you had the largest organization, but you were the quietest in respect of these elders, if you will, who were paying forward all this information. And then now at 55, these people are in their 70s, but it was that relationship, right? It was that relationship, being in that room, having that access where you feel like, well, I'm just this 11-year-old kid, knucklehead from the streets. How the hell did I get in this room with these brilliant business people and have the biggest company in here and just sit back and take it all in? Because you didn't receive that education at school or otherwise. But you're receiving it, I would say, the right way.
Yes.
Right.
So mentors in mine that gave me well beyond what school just did not do. And I actually thrived in school. I'll come back to that. But Bishop Dwayne Swilly, and I definitely want to capture this for Bishop one of these days and share this with him. This man is, first of all, grew up as a youth leader, pastorally, comes from a generation of ministers, if you will. He had one of the largest youth ministries in Atlanta for many, many, many years. Bishop Dwayne Swilly came down here to South Florida right around the time where I'm at the University of Miami playing Division I football, right? Something happens with me in that relationship with football, I'm lost. I'm lost. You talk about health and fitness, the dynamics of now I'm being a Division I football player, 255 pounds. I'm running a 4.5, 4.6 speed 40, right? A bowling ball, knocking people out, to then I'm depressed. I'm not exercising. I'm still eating as much as I did when I was playing at that level. I go from 245, 250 to like 285, right? Just look like a bee sting, right? Just swollen. And it was all because I felt betrayed, right? I felt slighted. I felt betrayed by the system because I did everything the system told me to do. I got the 4.0 GPA, right? I wasn't chasing tail and in the clubs and doing drugs like all my friends were, right? I had the 1400 SAT score, not because I was the smartest kid in the room, but I busted my backside to learn the information under mentorship and tutoring, especially I couldn't afford it. Coming from a single family home in Opelika, Florida. You know anything about the hood in Opelika, Liberty City, Carroll City. This is not one of those places you want to turn down the wrong alley, right? To your point, 10-inch nails. Yep. So I had to sleep on the floor one night because they were shooting up the house next door. So understanding those beginnings, but I had a Jamaican mother who didn't play that, right, Kessie? Okay. And no matter how I decided to show up on the streets, when I came home, you had to be prim, you had to be proper, you had to have the right mannerisms, right? You had to have those things because that British colonial island called Jamaica, right, had a certain...
They'll beat it into you.
Yes.
Literally.
Right. Like, spare the rod, spoil the child was prevalent in my household, right?
Yep.
So the dynamics of that is to say, here's now this mentor because I leave the University of Miami, dude. And I don't say this to brag about me, right? 4.0, 1400 SAT score. I'm playing Division I football, all conference, all state, all county, all those things. And I'm playing the jazz saxophone and classical piano and band, right? That wasn't me. That was Yvonne. That was Yvonne Donaldson, right? She would not allow her son to have idle hands.
Fantastic.
She refused. And I honor her for her sacrifice, just like your mom. Also, and I don't know if your mom's still with us, but my mom.
She is.
So my mom transitioned last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And I appreciate it because I know she's still here, even in these meetings, brother, the dynamics of aligning our houses and bringing people together so that we can make it more sustainable. Now, count your impact to make it more sustainable because you're making this money and it's filtering through. How do we make the impact sustainable where it's not going to the wrong hands, if I was hearing correctly?
Right.
Going to the people like you, like me, who have that tenacious attitude, right? And I even call it, somebody shared this with me, founder syndrome, Kessie, where we are the most tenacious people on this planet.
That's right.
Founder syndrome.
Yes.
So Bishop Dwayne Swilly was one of those mentors that in my 20s picked me up, dusted me off, right? And he poured into me as a Georgia Tech graduate because even though he's a pastor, he technically had a business degree at the highest levels, MBA, the whole nine. So he leveraged, and this is early on. I didn't even realize this, Kessie. This was early on me understanding sustainable giving, because he was leveraging his margins to fund the mission.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was
Yep.
an epiphany I had a couple weeks ago. His
Yep.
margins fund the mission. Nonprofit doesn't necessarily have to mean non-revenue.
Sure.
That's the NFL.
Yes. Right.
Nonprofit organization. Says
Right.
Rolex, nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So in this epiphany, this man comes in my life and pours in and says, well, you know, I grew up jack of all trades, music, football, engineering, like all this stuff. I'm good at a lot of things, right? But I didn't know what was I masterful at? What was the one thing that no one could touch me? I am gifted for this thing. And it was like, well, all of the things. It allows me to be an ideal mentor and to lead leaders, to lead a group of mentors, because I can walk in a room at a opera, Kessie, right? We took those 120 kids from the hood to the Florida Grand Opera.
Yeah.
I'm a huge opera guy. I saw Pavarotti before he died. My dad used to play records. I can remember my dad playing records when I was a little kid. And like I said, a kid out of the hood like I was, but always had the tapes and the whole opera. And you know what I said about opera? I don't mean to interrupt you. But the thing about opera is it would calm my rage. And I recognized that early. It was mostly arias. And it wasn't violent orchestra music, right? It was arias mostly. And that's why I was drawn to Pavarotti, and it would calm I would literally sit there like you just did with my hand in my car at 20 years old, feeling like I wanted to murder. And I would just go, calm down. And I would do, because I saw him do this in movies, right? With their hand. And so then I started to do that. I was embarrassed doing it, but I was like, it makes me feel better. It helps me get under control. So you say opera, we got that in common too, brother.
So Kessie, like we can't make this up.
No, you can't.
And in fact, the Florida Grand Opera has offered me a board chair because of what we caused and what we did. They had never seen anything like it.
Wow.
See all these kids come from an impoverished area, an underserved area, to walk in the Florida Grand Opera, to see the auditorium and just be completely blown away. We didn't do it once, we did it twice.
Wow.
The dynamics of what is possible because of the word access. I know I am where I am today because of the access. Yes, I had to do it for myself, to your point. I had to do it for myself. No one was going to do it for me, but I didn't do it by myself.
Sure.
Right? I sought mentors. Didn't have a father around. I couldn't pick him up in a lineup if I tried. So anything I saw in another man that I wanted to adopt and learn for myself, I would seek mentoring. If they liked it or not, I was going to get from them what I wanted to become.
Right.
And I developed. This is like you said, I wasn't the guy to be jumping on a podcast, a microphone, a stage, a pulpit, to be talking. Hell no, man. I want to be the background, playing my saxophone in the background, wearing all black. Oh, come to the front and solo. Hell no, I'll be back here, right?
Right.
This was a transition, but to your point, I believe we are called. I believe there's sleeper agents. Somebody gave that to me. These sleeper agents that were always one kind of in the background, may have had the answers, may have had the tenacity, but would not speak up. And in Jamaica, they say children will be seen and not heard.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a wisdom behind that, because if you shut your mouth and use these two things God gave you and listen, you learn something.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. And so from Bishop Dwayne Swilley's, in fact, Bishop's bishop, so his mentor. So the mentor's mentor shared with him that people don't change until the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change. And that at 21 years old messed me all up, because I was always that kid that says, I'm going to learn from other people's mistakes. I don't need to go through it. I saw you deal with that, so I'm not going to do what you did, right? So when I heard that, I was like, man, I'm a human being, so it's just like everybody else. No one's better or less than anyone. So it's like, well, am I susceptible to that as well? Like, what am I not seeing? What am I not consciously aware of that I'm not doing? And start to be more intentional about seeking those things out. And then I find another mentor, Mr. Sean Callaghy, decamillionaire out of New Jersey, a blind lawyer from New Jersey. You might as well call him Daredevil. You might as well call him Daredevil, bro. Right? They called me Peter Pan. They talk. I was like, what are y'all talking about? This guy's a blind lawyer from New Jersey. What the hell? So I'm still waiting to have that pitched one of these days to him. Right. But he's well on his way to become a quad millionaire, billionaire, because he has a movement called Unblinded. So I'm like, pun intended much? Like, we're punning, and I got in his room, and like you, I sat in the back, and I just ate. I just ate that knowledge up, man. All his podcasts, all his modules. I was watching it. I was taking notes, and I'm an educator too, so I'm a hybrid of a entrepreneur, engineer, entrepreneur, educator, right? So I'm going to be your best student. You teach me something, I'm either going to prove you right or prove you wrong, right? Because I'm going to do it all and do it the best that anybody could do it. So in that, to take his formula, Jerry, that you mentioned earlier, he created his formula. 25 years, he goes from the blind lawyer who gets the top 100 verdicts. Now he has 127 lawyers working for him. Right?
Right.
And Cassie knows, like, I'm not a respected of persons, like the good book says, right? I'm not a fanatic. I went to the Division I college, University of Miami, with Hall of Famers, right?
Right.
I don't care. Like, you're just another dude. With that said, I will always model success.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right? If it works, it works. Why are we reinventing the wheel?
Right.
Right? There is a more sustainable way for Jerry to make that impact long-term, legacy-wise, beyond his years. For his children's children's children. Right? And it's still yet make a community impact. Things that we didn't know, trust, various trusts. We see all these extremely wealthy people, these endowments, all the universities, all the hospitals, right? They're funded. They're not begging us for money. They don't close when a fundraiser doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
We got to fire people when a grant dries up.
Sure. Right.
So we're missing something. There's something we don't know. And like Cassie knows, as I continue to consume and be around the people that Sean Callaghan essentially attracts to him, we all have that attraction, right?
Yeah.
He calls it ecosystem merger. So it's like, I've got people that Jerry doesn't know. Jerry has people he doesn't know. What does it look like if we align? What does it look like? 1 + 1 does not equal 2. Right? That math ain't mathing. There's a way to have exponential growth. There is an Amazon model.
There is, and again, back to the point of why when we first had our conversation, I was like, listen, there are so many people that are aligned in the same way, but they don't even know the other person exists. And by doing these podcast episodes and meeting all these people is phenomenal, because people are impacted by the conversations you have, right? You get to network with like-minded people, and then you realize that there's a world outside of what you're hearing or what you're being exposed to in this narrow box.
Yeah.
And I think as kids that come from our backgrounds, the kids today don't think that there are any ways out. I think that box is even more narrow. I'm sorry.
Say that again. Kids from what?
Kids from our backgrounds, right? Kids from our backgrounds. I think that when I was a kid, it was the American dream, right? I knew that if I worked hard, I was going to be better. I was going to make it out. Now, I didn't know what make it out looks like,
right?
But it was make it out for me was a full-time job and a place to live. That's making it out. Okay. I always say, what's my greatest achievement? My 3 children graduated from high school. Wow. That's my greatest achievement. Of all the things, if I'll ever do that I could hang my hat on, good or bad, the greatest achievement was my 3 children who moved to Tennessee with me 5 years ago from Oregon, who work. I see them almost every day. They're in the mid-20s, and they're the greatest achievement of my life because I broke institutional generational poverty.
Whoa.
I broke it. But to kids today, even though the opportunities are massive, I think, to use your point, Cassie, the box is even more narrow, is what they're taught, is what they're told. There's no options. The man's out to steal from us. I can't get anywhere. And there's more opportunity than there has ever been. And yet, in our mind, what we're being told so that we stay under that thumb is there is nothing for you. You can't do anything. Everything is everybody else's fault. And it goes against that 14-year-old beaten down Jerry standing on that curb.
Right.
Having that voice tell him something completely different.
Yeah. Oh, dude. And that's so Have you heard? So Sean Callaghy is a product, if you will. He honors source from Tony Robbins, right? I've never been to a Tony Robbins event. Have you ever been to a Tony Robbins
No, I
event?
haven't.
So
I've done.
yes, you've been to one.
I didn't go to the event, but I did a mastermind, so I'm familiar with it.
So it's a master, self-development, personal development, things of that nature, right? Highest levels, right? A lot of us are in that space of, causing better for others, if the mentorship, the dynamic. Well, Sean being a proponent of that, like he grew because of the access, if you will, and development from him and others, right? He was consuming the Zig Ziglars and the John Maxwells. He was consuming all that information as he was going blind, right? So as he's going blind, now his third eye opens. He starts making connections when it comes to business acceleration. So his is more focused on business acceleration, even though there's influence mastery, self-mastery, process mastery. It's really about how this connects to accelerating sustainably your business. So it's all about scaling. That's all it is. That's why I love it so much. Came to my gala a few years ago. We ended up 4Xing in one night than I had done in 8 years.
Wow.
8 years, bro. And to date, because of Sean's formula, and this is just one platform. We ain't talking about all the other ones we about to apply this to. Kessie witnessed for herself. When we met this guy, we were after 8 years at like 400 something, maybe kids. I think 350 at the time we met him. And then 2 years after, we 4X and have given away over $500,000.
Wow.
In just these last 2 years alone. So the X, like you said, the hockey stick. I caught that. I was listening.
Yes,
the
sir.
hockey stick, that exponential growth.
Right.
It looks linear. It looks kind of stagnant, and boom.
Yes.
Right. So right now we're at that curve. Like Kessie knows. Like I'm feeling it every day. Like whoa, whoa. Like it's just acceleration. How do we make sure it is an actual exponential growth and it doesn't capsize?
Right. Right.
So with Sean, through by way of, and I know this resonates with everybody listening to this, especially you, especially when we're talking about the youth, that narrow path, technology, all the things. Sean quoted during one of his immersions, which I absolutely have to invite you to one of them. During one of the immersions, he quoted Tony Robbins. I don't know who Tony Robbins got it from, maybe Zig Ziglar, I don't know. He said, there's an order. It says, tough times. Have you heard this before?
No.
Tough times end up yielding tough people.
Yes.
Right?
Tough people end up yielding easier times.
Yes.
Easier times yield soft people.
Right.
Yes.
And then these soft people, boom, full circle, create these difficult times.
Yeah. I think that I heard that originally where, hard times make hard men make easy times make soft men make hard times.
Boom. There's the cycle. So
Yes.
but
it's the truth.
Gary said, he says, we are in an extremely unique position of opportunity. If you just show up to work consistently, you're an incredible employee.
That's but it's the craziest thing, right? I mean, if you think about these kids just for participating, they get a participation award.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Now, I can tell you, it wasn't participation award if I didn't show up. I knew what I'd be getting if I didn't show up.
Right.
Right. And I used to have this conversation with a lot of people, but then I stopped having it because I realized it sounded like I was abused. Right.
Right.
But I know I grew up in a different time. Like if I did not show up or if I didn't know what I was supposed to know, I would not only get spanked by the teacher, but then I'd have to go home and explain why the teacher spanked me to go home and then probably get it myself at home. So, but it made us grow up a little bit harder, right? And that's not to say that we don't fall to pieces or that our generation doesn't suffer from depression or any of those things. That's not to say that. It's just to say that the generation now has so much, but they don't take advantage of what they're being given like the way we did. And it's our job to bring them back to show them that, if you want good, as they would say in Jamaica, you know, it's have to run. Right.
And it's one of those things where our society, the West in general, has cast out the elders. And every other civilization, the elders are the ones that are listened to. Yes. Am I right?
Yep.
Cast out the elders. And through this process of podcasting and talking to the public generally over the last few years, I've learned that That is absolutely true. But here's what I know. I live in a part of town here, Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, that has a heavy Middle Eastern population. And so these young kids, I now have, I don't know, 8 or 10 or 12 of them. We get together regularly. And these are kids that are just looking for information. And they will sit and they will pepper me with questions till 2:30 in the morning. We walk out of the gym at midnight, 2:30 in the morning. There's 7 of us standing out in front of the gym. And they're just keep hitting me with questions. And I just keep standing there and keep answering questions. And we keep having dialogue. They want that dialogue because they respect their elders.
Right.
Because of their background. But here in the West, they're losing all of that information. Oh, I'm too old. You know, the whole old man up the hill in the snow both ways with no shoes on. I push back against that all day long because what I have can save you. What I have can help you with what you're going to do tomorrow, or it could help you from making a catastrophic mistake a week from now.
Right.
Because we've been there and done that. When I put it like this, our brains are hard drives. I tell this to all the 20-year-olds. So all you 20-year-olds listening to me and younger, this is reality. We all have a 100 gigabyte hard drive. Okay. Yours, about 15 gigabytes, 10 to 15, maybe. If you're 25 years old, you're about 10, 15 gigabytes heavy. I'm probably 90 or 95. Here's the difference, though. At 90 or 95, I have all of this hard drive to go access for all of this information. And yet, the older I get, the less I think I know.
Right. Right.
The more hungry I am for knowledge and conversations and things like that. The 25-year-old, even though he's at 15, he thinks he knows 95.
Right.
Right? So there's nothing new to learn, right? What's the old man going to teach me?
Right.
And we need to fix that. We need, and this resonates particularly in that community, and it should resonate in every community. Young guys, it's a superpower to know what you don't know, and that the only question never asked, the answer to it is no. And also, there are no stupid questions, just people too stupid to ask them.
Ooh.
Yes.
If they learn that, they'd go a long way. That life would be that much more easier for them. But unfortunately, the message on a broad scale is 180 degrees the opposite of all of that. Don't look stupid. I'm not going to ask, particularly us men. Am I right, AJ? We're not going to ask stupid questions. I'm not going to look dumb. I will literally tell people. I've sat in sales calls where I've said, I'm sorry, what you're asking me for, I think I can do it, but I know it's the third time. Do you have a crayon? You're going to have to write it down with a crayon because I don't understand what you're telling me, right? I can't, I don't understand. And I don't want to leave here without that knowledge. And if that means I have to look stupid, it means I have to look stupid. I don't care. But realistically, I don't care what you think. I don't care what the person next to me thinks, right? To my clients that I work with that are heavy, what do you care what the guy next to you thinks of you at the gym? He doesn't even notice you. It's all in your head. You're making it all up.
Right.
Yes. We live in our heads. We create a story, and that story doesn't exist.
Yes, that's right.
You know, what you believe to true 90% of the time probably isn't even true.
That's right.
That's a story that you've created.
And where does that come from? Because we weren't born that way.
No, I mean, I think pop culture. I think that the system, to your point about earlier, you said the system, you know, the system was working against you, even though you did everything you were supposed to. I think the system teaches them. I mean, this victim, I think it all flows downstream of that victim mentality. But I think, you know, this is a much different conversation, but I think health-wise, health is the most important thing, and everything is downstream of health. And so we've poisoned all of our kids with the food that they eat. You know, when you start talking about 40% of PepsiCo's revenue comes from the food stamp program, and 10% of food stamp money, $114 billion, 10% of that, $11.4 billion is spent on sugar pop.
Yes.
10%, right? When you start thinking about those in those terms, we're feeding our poor kids this garbage food. Their brains are scrambled already. Add the internet, add their phones, add all the rest of it. And all of a sudden you have these generations that we have that continue to, as time goes by, move further and further away from the lessons and the people and the experiences that they need, I think.
Yeah. We're feeding to your point, and that's beautifully said, and how you are been so articulated. We're feeding into the machine as much as we can complain and sit on even a podcast and discuss it and talk about it. We're feeding into it. So how do we now shift our actions and our resources towards a solution, right? And Kessie knows this of me. Like, I can't sit by. My mother raised me this way. That whole dynamics of, like, if you're not willing to do something about it, don't complain. Or don't complain about something you're not willing to take action around. So
Right.
what actions are we taking to disrupt that? Because at the end of the day, there's nothing new under the sun. I can imagine what our parents were experiencing when everybody was on that Woodstock journey.
Yeah. Right.
What was workforce like then?
Right.
Mhm.
Right? So
Right.
frivolous workforce is not new. What
Mhm.
shifted then? We do not have to reinvent the wheel, right? We have to learn from our history, not just talk about it, not just listen to it, not just read it.
Sure.
How are we shifting our ways by way of what worked and did not work? We can innovate it, but there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like, for example, when everybody's like, man, that's absolutely brilliant, your model and and I'm like, the brilliance and innovation is that I'm getting back to basics.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I have a friend of mine that has been, he was a mentor to me in my teenage years. And he was a 7th and 8th grade teacher for 40, just retired, 50 years. He's in his 70s. And I had gone away from him for about 25 years, and we got back together, and we're at a Portland Trailblazer basketball game. Hadn't seen each other for 25 years. He's still teaching 7th and 8th graders. This is about 10 years ago. And I said, in my day, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Those were all the things that the devil was feeding to us, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the church fought against. And those were the things he said. And he said, without skipping a beat, very religious man, a fantastic role model. He said, I'd take those things in a heartbeat compared to the porn on the phones and porn. He said, I'd take all of those things in a heartbeat, no questions asked. He said, we are fighting a battle that is insurmountable, he thought, to him.
Wow.
Against sex, drugs, and rock and roll, he felt like he had a chance. He said against the phones, the pornography, the boys in particular that are left alone with phones at 10 years old because mom works till 5 and they get off school at 3, and they're seeing these things. So there are these impediments that you and I didn't have when we were kids, that when you listen to these guys that came before us, in terms of, he's been teaching kids for 50 years, and he has that outlook. And this is one of the most positive, selfless, compassionate human beings. I've never met a man in particular like this man. For him to say that, it was a little demoralizing in that fight, because until we address, I think, the phone issue, and all the things that come with it for children, I think that this war is not going to get any easier.
So, and I love that, because Kessie, you being the queen of automation and technology, the dynamics of you have 2 girls, but the dynamics of, in general, protecting their innocence.
Yes.
Kessie's done a phenomenal job. I mean, these are 2 beautiful young ladies, but you could tell they have sustained their innocence. Their outlook in life is different than what you would see at these young ladies' ages, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kessie, from a place of technology, because I have my thoughts I want to share as well after you, but what would you speak towards? How do we safeguard against this level of access because of technology?
So safeguarding really stems with the parents, right? Because you can't really stop them from using technology, because there's nothing really built into it. Even when they say, okay, you can put on parental controls, they don't work.
Right.
As long as a kid has access to a laptop, right? It doesn't matter what safeguard you put on a cell phone, because they can bypass it, and they're smart enough at 10, 12 to bypass, and then they can erase their browsing history. So once you leave them alone with technology, really and truly, I hear parents all the time, oh, well, I didn't give my kid a cell phone. It doesn't really matter that you didn't give your kid a cell phone. Right now, we have so many things accessible. The kids have YouTube on their computers. They have everything that you can imagine. They can get on their computer. They don't need a cell phone. They can get on their iPod. They can get anywhere. So I think what we have to do as parents, to protect them, safeguard them, is explain to them, have conversations with them. And sometimes we leave it to having them sit down and have something else explain. No, we need to explain to them and stop sugarcoating things and tell them what the real dangers are, and show them, hey, this is what this looks like. And with my girls, I have those conversations, and a lot of people will approach me and they're like, oh, well, your daughter is just so, like, I have an older one, Jerry, just to give context. She's 16 years old, and she doesn't, I guess, party as much as her peers. She doesn't speak about boys in the same way, or girls, or whatever they're into, the same way that they do, and her beliefs are different. Does she get ostracized a lot because of that? Maybe. Do they think that she's standoffish or has an attitude problem? Maybe. Does she care? No. You
Good.
know,
Good.
and the difference is, for both of them, is that I've taught them, you don't care what anybody else thinks, right? It doesn't
Yep.
matter what they think,
Yes.
right? Here are the facts. The facts are, if you do this, this is what will happen. And I show them.
Right.
If you walk down this road, this is what the outcome is going to be. If there's no if, but, or maybe. So if that's what you choose to do, go ahead, do it. I'm not going to stop you. It's your life to live. But at least you know, and I've explained what that looks like.
I sent my children to a Chinese immersion school. So starting when they were 3 years old until the 5th grade, they learned to read, write, and speak Chinese fluently. And so my sons are both 6'5", 240 pounds. I'm 6'4" and 240 pounds. So these are gigantic kids.
Yeah.
Damn kids got taller than me. That's the worst part of it. But they're good boys. They're scared to death of their old man. So I got no
Just
problem.
believe that
Yes.
grown man is different.
That's all I need. That's all I need. Good respect, scared to death. And so my oldest son is 3rd grade, and we're getting reports that he's knocking kids over and he's getting in trouble at school. And so my wife would go and sat outside the gate. She saw that the kids would mess with him, and then in retaliation to kind of get them away, they'd go flying because he's a giant.
Right.
And all the teacher would see him do this,
Right. Yep.
Knock the kids over. And so what's that got to do with your story? We go to the teacher and we said to the teacher, okay, this didn't happen. The principal, we sit down. Oh, okay, we see. And I bring Tristan home. It's my son. And I said, why are you messing with the kids anyway? He said, well, they called me stupid. He's 3rd grade. If I brought him in here right now, he'd tell you this story. I said, are you? He goes, no. I said, well, what do you care what they think?
Right.
What do you care what they say? I started at 3rd grade teaching them that. I always get this pushback, Casey, to your point. My daughter, who's now 25, is the apple of my eye. We call her baby. Her name's Kira, but she's baby. I don't know anything about rebellious teenagers. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know how any of those, the kids that get described to me on social media, on movies, on television, in the news, I don't know about, oh, wait till she's 13. I have no idea what they're talking about, because I was present and there with my children every day while I was building companies. I made time to be there when they were little and when they got older. And I don't know what they're talking about relative to rebellious children. And I raised 3 of them. So I push back on that expectation. I think we speak it into existence with children. And children become what we speak into existence. You can speak success into existence, or you can speak the other way and you get these results. That's my take on that. So I'm right there with both of you. In particular with your daughters, 100%.
100% as well. And it's incredible. And big shout out to both of you, especially in raising girls. And then, of course, Jerry, when we talk about our boys in particular as well, based on the connotation of what's happening around them and having that disposition. So agreed. Social emotional intelligence, having those conversations of things that we didn't know when we were their age, and paying it forward to them. Correct. And we know that I'm thinking of your son in 3rd grade being surrounded by his friend, these pupils, if you will, that are around him, that are bullying him, that are doing those things, and his response. Generationally now, 10, 20 years later, those same 3rd graders are the ones having kids.
Yes.
Right? And then raising little boogers like they were.
Yes.
Okay? So in saying that, we know the proverbial saying that has been around for generations. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a child. And people have heard me say this plenty of times. They hear it again, because I found out during COVID, when they had to start acknowledging where that quote actually came from, and not allow people to assume that it was a school system that came up with it. It's actually an African proverb, right? And follow me, because I'm gonna share the rest of the proverb. We can all agree there's most likely more than one African proverb in the world, right?
Sure.
So it's like, okay, this is not just a random quote. This was a proverb. This was a wisdom, a book of wisdom that was printed, designed. They grabbed it, but they deleted, portions of it to serve their own purpose. Whatever the campaign was, it was too long to print the entire quote. So let's just use this part. The rest of the quote, the rest of the proverb says, it takes a village to raise a child, and the child not embraced by its village will burn it down to feel its warmth.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
People have written movies. Killmonger in the Black Panther was an exact direct. Kids can connect to that because they know the movie.
Sure.
Direct of that, like you dispelled this child that was still, but I didn't lay down and have the kid. So what?
Right.
He's still in your tribe. He's still in your village. And if we
Yes.
don't circle the wagons to support that situation, it will become your problem eventually when that child becomes an adult with access. Why
Yes.
do I say that? It takes a village. Most of us, we have our homes, we have our families. If we, Jerry, Kessie, AJ, are consciously competent in our upbringing of our children, we are a small percentage, not to take away from anyone else's parenting, but the conscious competence of the information that the parents did not know, they did not know. They don't know, they don't know. So who's going to take care of the gap in between? Well, we have the families, we have schools. Oh, we have churches. Let's talk about the church model. We can go off that for like another 3 hours, but just to be brief, statistically,
I'm here because of a church.
100%.
I'm sitting in front of you. After all I've told you, I'm sitting in front of you because of a church. So
and
please.
It was obvious. I heard it. You
Yes.
could hear it, by the grace of God, right? And all the things. We're not religious, legalistic, beating people with the Bible, but we have a strong faith.
That's right.
And I pour that into my girls too. Like, listen, you may not go to church every day, but you need to know your Bible. You need to,
it's a book of dysfunction. It's all right there. People messed up enough for you. Just read it. The pain of staying away outweighing the pain of change. Look at their pain. Let's walk this through so you don't have to go through it again and vicious cyclically have it passed down to your kids. Here's the challenge. Around that same time, when we found that statistic, 27% of kids are graduating with their college degrees and working their field of study. Only 27%.
Right.
One of our kids comes home and my boy, your girls walk in with a 20% of the test. Woohoo.
Right.
Talking about the fear of God going to come down. Well, we got a system bragging about how that went from 19 to 27. Woo! We're winning.
Yeah.
Now we have the church dynamic. Well, where did school start? Who housed education from the beginning?
Yeah.
It was a state, right? It was church, but the divide separated it, and factory workers and all those things that happened in those days. With that said, now if we look at religion, deletion, distortion, dilution, we can deep dive into that. But just look at the numbers. Statistically, Jerry, there are 16 times, so 16x, right? Business acceleration. If we could 16x a business, Jerry, boy, right? All right?
You're talking Google.
100%. Absolutely, right? 16 times more churches in America than schools.
That's right now.
Right now.
Well, I live in the South, so there's a church on every corner, so I believe that. Yeah.
Thank you. So every school you see, there's 16 churches in the surrounding area.
Yeah.
So we know that school's not enough. We know it. It's obvious, right? We say it, it's like, oh, okay, the elephant. Yeah, I saw it. Just no one talks about it. That's great. We know it. We have to supplement. But at the same time, the family dynamic isn't enough either. It's not going to solve the problem. Right? Where do we circle the wagons? Where do we typically we congregate and bring our families together? Most of the time, not everybody, most times a church.
Yeah.
What is the church doing action-wise for the community? Right? Because if I read the Bible that I believe we all believe in, James 2 talks about for widows and the homeless, fatherless children and widows. That's what the money, the resources was supposed to go towards supporting. It was not just a religious gathering. Yes, do not forsake the gathering, 100%.
Sure. Right.
But what are we doing when we gather? Just listening to the pastor for an hour and then going home? That's not what the Jewish synagogues are doing. They're planning, they're strategizing, they're aligning their business models, they're making sure the 10% integration of their tithe and offering, which they call tithing, based on their Torah, is all a part of it. The Mormon religion, they've got all this figured out like a machine. The rest of us,
let me tell you how important that is, what you just said, from my perspective.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you, having sat through 5,000 church services, what a pastor ever said. I couldn't tell you. Right.
Right.
I never listened. But as a kid with my background, the one constant I had from
Right.
first through the 8th grade, maybe 5 years old until the 8th grade, was this church. And the church had a school, and they allowed us to come. I took 2 buses across town as a 6-year-old by myself to go to this school. And then my little brother came right behind me, and away we go. We would travel the city to go to this school. They let us go for free. Now, they stood us up against a wall. This is the 1970s. You get in trouble against the wall for an hour with your nose touching it. That's after you got beat during the day. And then you get home late and you miss dinner and mom beats you again. So you resonated with me, Kessie, when you said that 100%. But you know what? And I remember all that. It's terrible. It's fine. It is what it is. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't gone through that. But the point I'm making, AJ, from what you said, is that going to those Thursday night church events to me was like Christmas every Thursday. I lived in this world that was, we didn't know any different, but looking back on it as a grown adult, it's nothing you would wish on anyone, right? None of us would wish my childhood. I don't know enough about y'all's childhood on anybody, but for me, the escape was going to church, and I got to see these people, these friends, these kids that were my own age, right? And I got to hear these fantastical stories in that Thursday context. We would go maybe on Tuesday, Bible study, and I got to hear these great stories, and those lessons in that violent world that I grew up in never were lost on me. They might have been put in the back a little bit. Right? They might have been, as I became a teenager, they weren't at the forefront. But I think somewhere at that 14 years old, when that voice gave me that advice out of clear nowhere, that had to have come from somewhere. And so I always say, going to church and being a part of church, I'm not a practicing Christian now, but I live my life as if there is a God. Yeah. I live my life as if there is heaven and hell. Yeah. And growing up in that, I think that I stayed above that water, in part because of that epiphany, but also in part because the lessons that I learned through those Bible studies and those teachings, and most particularly the men, because me and men don't have a good history. Right. I won't even get into it. I can't even talk about it. Right. So men and I always had this, I'm 6'4", I'll kill you. Don't look at me. Girls, I'll tell you how bad it is. I don't have female or male doctors. I have a bunch of medical issues. I don't have male doctors. I just don't do it. I resonate with the females, but I had 2 male teachers that came into my life at the right time, Christian pastors, youth group pastors. And to this day, the lessons and the things they taught me more by example than by the words have resonated with me through now 4 more decades. And so what you just said about religion, I don't think we can make a big enough point out of, because if it kept me above water, I didn't go live the life and preach on the circuit or anything. I didn't do any of those things, but it gave me a morality that the street doesn't teach you. The street teaches you to act first.
Kill and be killed. Yeah,
that's correct. You don't get killed, you kill. You act first. That's what the street teaches you. You steal before you get stolen from. Right. You kill before you get killed. The church taught me something very different. And so I was able to balance those 2 things together and ultimately hit that hockey stick like we talked about. So I think that's absolutely important. And the way that it is not discussed in society today, I think, is part of what is so detrimental. And COVID taught us what the system thinks of church.
The COVID exposed it all.
Yes.
And something you said, you are a shining example of this, brother, a shining example of, and again, I'm not religious, right? But if it works and it makes sense, it's practical. The good book says, raise up a child in the way that they should go. And when they are old,
yes, never depart from it. Okay. And again, to that point, have not. Okay. So I will go to church, randomly. Yeah. But scriptures, I can remember. And we're talking about scriptures that I heard when I was however young.
Yeah.
I remember them because they stay with you. And it's like my kids, right? They remember those things. They don't go to church every Sunday, but they remember them.
Yeah. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and he that loveth is known of God.
Known to
He
God.
that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. 1 John 4, 7 and 8. Where in the world did I get that one?
Right?
Because it's a song I learned when I was a kid.
There you go. Exactly.
That
That
crazy?
impact.
I don't know if I got that perfect, but I'm reciting that from 40 years ago to make your point.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's
Exactly.
beautiful. And again, to your point, that's mentorship at the highest level.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? That is
Yes.
paying it forward. That is loving on one another. You know, the dynamics of when Casey was talking about the scripture, the Bible says don't add or subtract from it. And mind you, I love my mom. I honor her. I don't disrespect her memory whatsoever. At the same time, there's some learning.
Sure.
There's some learning. For example, to go through a therapy session to find out or hear that discipline without love is abuse.
Mm.
That was hard. It was like,
Wait. So what you trying to say, that school abused me?
right? So, but to your point, it's like, where does the love? If I spank my child, but I don't show that love, then that's abusive, right? That's abusive because the emotional connotation, the psychological ramifications, the things it does, you're making a more rigid person and being. But then to have that emotional intelligence and even to have the vocabulary to articulate your feelings, I'm mad. Why? I don't know. I'm now defensive. I don't know what to do to help you to even show that level of compassion. I'm now in defense.
Mm-hmm.
We're not being provided this information in school. We're not being provided this information at church, right? And not home. We don't know. Society is pouring and plugging in foolishness. So when you raise a child in the way they should go, this is the direction they're going. So when they're old, they do have a part. That suits on both sides.
Sure.
On both sides, right? And that's what we're seeing. So even though we see all these adults, which are just children in adult suits,
Right.
they're underdeveloped. We are underdeveloped in these particular areas. I'm just learning the emotional wheel over these last 2 years. I'm 45.
Yeah, right.
Where was that class at school and college?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe my marriage would have survived if I knew how to articulate, right? That I feel diminished when this happens because I experienced a certain level of abuse. My mom did it out of love, but there's a dynamic that she didn't come and hug me after say I love you.
I'll push back on you just a little bit on that,
Please.
AJ. I would not be sitting here if my mother didn't beat the living daylights out of me and my little brother.
Absolutely.
And she did it when she laid a beating. My mother knew how to lay a beating. I had 6 older brothers and sisters that she practiced on.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And then she's working full time because remember, 7 years later, I show up. So she's working full time when I was a kid, and we would tie the babysitter up and put her in the closet, and we would set trees on fire. And
these are movies.
I got stories, man. And my mother, I don't know how she did it, but I could feel her frustration as she would beat us. But I can tell you that I got a beating for 1 out of every 10 times I deserved it. And I made decisions. My little brother and I made decisions on about what we were about to do wrong at 9 or 10 or 12 years old. Maybe not by 12, but 8, 9, 10, 11. We made decisions whether or not the risk of the beating that we were going to take from my mother was worth getting caught.
Right.
So we would hesitate before we would do something. It wasn't about, my mother rarely told us, she's 86 years old. God bless her. My dad are both 86 years old. They're both still alive.
Yeah.
But my mother's 86 years old. I just saw her last week in Portland, had dinner with her twice. And, she apologizes. I'm sorry for how I was. I wouldn't be sitting here. And so my take on that, just to give it some breadth there, is that I didn't need to be told. My world understood violence, right? I understood retribution. I understood payback. And so if I was going to do something wrong, right? If I was going to do something and I thought I was going to get a beating, that meant what I was going to do was wrong. So I learned right from wrong. And then I learned to evaluate whether or not, and this was an early negotiation in my head between my brother and I can remember we were going to steal some paint cans out of a neighbor's garage. Good chance we were going to get caught because they were home, but we really wanted to go tag a building, right? The whole 9 yards. We're little kids. And it's like, I don't know, is that worth getting a beating over? And it was a beating, upside your head. Y'all know what I mean. My mother didn't, there wasn't no get over my lap. There was come in swinging. Yep. And so, and she'd just go from one side of the bed to the other and then go back and forth. I understood it. I understood the beating. And so those beatings for me, helped me get through the life that I had, because I understood that there was a cost to doing things wrong. And I also understood that if I did something wrong, what was the worth? So maybe when on two occasions, that voice showed up inside my head on two different occasions, maybe having those adjust, or being able to negotiate that with myself, and having that risk reward structure in my head. I had been in fights, and twice I've had a man underneath my boot, face on the ground, and that boot's coming down. Yeah. And I promise you this, and I mean,
like this. It's over. Yeah.
And right as I got that has happened to me twice. And again, I'm all bloody. Nobody, AJ, you've been in a fight, and nobody wins a fight, right? Everybody comes away less better for it.
Yep.
But my boot's up, and it just said, "That's enough."
Yeah.
Wow.
That's all it said. That's enough.
That's enough.
And because I would have murdered him, he'd been dead. But I'm 18, I'm 15, I'm 17, I'm full of rage, right? He deserves it. The world deserves it. None of this is fair.
Right.
I got an idea about right from wrong, right? I got a good clue about maybe this is enough. And somewhere, maybe that's her, my mother. That's enough. You took it too far. I don't know. Right. I don't want to dramatize that more than I already am. But I think that there is something to, at least in my life, for those beatings that I took, regardless of whether or not they had love with them, they helped me understand right from wrong, risk reward, but also that there was a cost to everything that I did.
Dude, and that's right there. And I'm so glad, because in my mind, I was formulating how I want to respond, because that was such a value add, which I appreciate. There is a cost. And then, not to make it sound religious, but again, if Jesus had to be beat and crucified for our salvation, there is a cost.
Yes.
Right? There's a cost.
Right.
The greatest amongst us endured that. There's a cost. So to your point, 100%, I value every single spanking. We can have many, many stories about our various spankings and the dynamics of it.
Yep.
The learning I did gain, though, especially as the male, as the man of the house, not having grown up with certain emotional intelligence, right?
Sure.
I learned from that situation. There was a value that I gained, even the lesson I gained from those spankings, if you will, that I say now with my son, yes, I am not sparing the rod, right? Yep. I'm not spoiling this child. And once I am done, I come back in the room, I embrace him, I love on him, I tell him I love him, and we have a conversation about why this had to happen.
Some of the best wrestling I ever did with my sons was post-beating.
Post-beating. Absolutely.
And they're good boys, I should point out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because of that. And I had to acknowledge you for this, brother. And I know 2:30, we're coming up on time, Kessie, in a bit. They talk about how Jesus was an incredible storyteller, brother, and you absolutely personify that.
Oh, wow. Wow, I appreciate that. You're going to make me blush under this beard. You're not going to be able to see it, but I appreciate that.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. You know, I think that we definitely need to hop on and have another one and really dive into tips and tactics. But before we go, I definitely want to, for all our young listeners out there, Jerry, if you could go into what you think was some of the most important takeaways that you got from your mentorship, you know, that you think right now someone 20 years old, just have their first job, would really be able to grab onto and probably implement something that would be very useful for them.
I think the way you phrased the question, I'll answer that directly. When I was 16 years old, I worked at McDonald's for 9 months. My best friend in the whole world, I met working at McDonald's. 2 of my children are named after him. He still works for me. We've worked the same company, works at one of my companies to this day. He's Uncle Mike to everybody. I met him there. So there was huge benefit to that. $3.15 an hour, I started working at McDonald's. And all I ever did, and you heard my story later, working at the messenger company, is say yes. So if you asked me to go to work, I just said yes. What job do you have? And the worst job at McDonald's was cleaning the fryers, if you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And they had allocated 4 hours. Mike, my buddy, was my manager at the time. He's 2 years older than me. And they had allocated 4 hours to cleaning the fryers, and it's a dirty job, and it's hot. You get burnt, and you got to replace and filter, and it's just, you're moving it around. It's tight conditions. It's just miserable work. And they said, that's what we want done. They showed me how to do it one time. The next time it took me 40 minutes to do it. And I swapped out 2 of the fryers with brand new oil, which takes even longer. And they're looking at me like, what is this? I said, what else do you have? Well, what's next? I'm not gonna take 4 hours doing that. I can help somewhere else. It doesn't take me 4 hours to do that. They said, well, number 1, here's a raise. Number 2, we got the work, all the product comes in at midnight on Saturday night. How about you? It means working in the freezer, and we'll give you an employee, and you can manage that. And you guys bring in all of the stuff for the super busy McDonald's. I was like, I don't know anything about it. Let me at it. So midnight, I just say yes. Midnight, I'm in the freezer. It's freezing cold. As you can imagine, you're there for an hour and a half, just unloading a semi. Stuff rolls in through the door, and you're throwing it. You have to put the programs and procedures in place to make it work. I changed it all up, got it in, checked it all in, counted it off. Away you go. I use those lessons that McDonald's was gracious enough to pay me $3.15 an hour to do. The lessons they taught me, I learned today, I use today in my business.
Wow.
So we look at $3.15 an hour. We look at now in the world today, $15 an hour, right? And he's not paying me for it, and it's not worth it. And I'm not, they're underpaying me, and they're paying Bob more, and all of these things that go through our heads. I never, to the 20-year-old, to use your example, that's got his first job and is trying to get out there, just work and say yes. They are not taking advantage of you. McDonald's did not take advantage of me. I took advantage of, they paid me $3.15 an hour to learn skills that I use to run multi-hundreds of millions of dollars worth of companies. Imagine that. So to that 20-year-old, I would say, just say yes. And something else, if I can, just for another minute. I never got around the water cooler, never any gossiping, never any of that. And if someone didn't show up today and I would do their job, I would then go to the boss and say, I didn't realize I could do both people's job. I don't know why you would hire them. I don't know why you need them. So they don't show up. And it turns out the job you have me doing, I can also do their job. Not, I want more money for that job. I'll do their job if you pay me their salary and my salary. Nuh-uh. Because if I could do their job and my job, and I already agreed to work for whatever it was you're paying me, I owe that to you. And so I would go and say, I don't think you need it anymore. So I would end up in one job, I ended up doing 3 people's jobs because, the amount of work that people think that they can do is far below what reality is. And so the mind, right? The mind and the body's much stronger than the mind ever is. The mind gives out way before the body ever does. And so I go in there and say, I can do both of those jobs. You can let them go. That's better for the company. And you're paying me a day's worth of work. Today's people would go, Jerry, that's insane. He should pay you more. They should give you more. And I go, yeah, I'm sitting where I am. You're sitting where you are. My program got me here. Let me know how your program does.
Right.
I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. I heard that from someone this past weekend about providing value. That the fact is that most people don't understand value. They always assume that what they're doing is more than enough value when it isn't.
Correct. That's exactly right. When people eat calories, the studies show that people overestimate their calories that they eat by half. I think that people overestimate their importance by more than half.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I would agree with that.
So that's what I would tell a 20-year-old.
I love that. AJ, since we're talking about value, what value would you add to that?
Again, profound lessons and stories, and just implanted beautifully, Jerry. Even the lessons that I walk away with in this conversation, the value that was gained in the workplace, the various workplaces, because similar to Jerry, I started working at a very young age. It's insurmountable. It's invaluable. So even having to add a dollar amount, which is obviously by way of being an American citizen, we equate value to dollar signs, right? Not euros, other things. So the invaluable lessons that have been received in the workplace, need to be present. Like, we need to be more present to the valuable things. Mentorship, for example, right? That's what always comes to mind for me, right? If I am in the workplace, I'm now exchanging time, which is my life force, right? I'm exchanging some of this time of my life for $1. when I can actually seek out even more value, right?
Sure.
So if I can step into intentionalities, being more intentional with the time I'm spending. Yes, there's a job that has to be done, but like you said, like, there are people you're around, right? Seeking that mentorship, seeing value in others, and understanding these are the things that you may be looking for, or at times, especially a young person's not thinking that way, but you look up to the person because they talk well, or they show up a different way, and asking those questions, as I said before, right? It's like, I don't want to feel stupid. I don't want to feel insecure. There's that insecurity. There's that fear of failure. There's that fear of rejection. Fear of failure statistically is a real thing. That's a real fear that comes up in our bodies. Fear of rejection is a lie that we're told in our minds, if it's the devil or otherwise, that fear of rejection is a lie. Like, if I go up to a girl and ask her on a date and she says no, I feel rejected, right? Oh, what's wrong with me? I start to question myself versus, well, maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe she just broke up with somebody. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe you're ugly.
No. What you say?
Maybe you're ugly.
Maybe I'm ugly, right? But that's the first thing we feel, right?
Sure.
We immediately go into our insecurities versus, like you said with your sons and your daughters, like, I don't care. Even if she does think I'm ugly, I don't care. I don't think I'm ugly. And I know a lot of people don't think I'm ugly either. So that is what she believes. That's her perception, and not let it be projected onto me. Right? So being able to step into that, and mind you, these are lessons that came over time.
Yes.
The lesson that came over time. No one was having, Jerry, Kessie, were having these levels of conversations with us when we were 20 years old, 19 years old, right?
No, not at all. If I had heard that years ago, listen, you're going to be working here, but if you happen to see the supervisor or manager, ask them how they got there.
Yes.
Ask them questions, pick their brain. These are things that invaluable, what I mean? Because you genuinely don't know what you don't know.
No, right.
As an entrepreneur, I have told people 1,000 times to ask questions. Business owners, since we're talking about business love to talk about their experiences and their business.
Yeah.
So if you asked me, should you, and I've been asked this many times, should I go to college? I go, no, get a job. Get a job and ask questions. Shut up and ask questions. That's what I do for 4 years, and get 4 different jobs, or get 6 different jobs in 4 years, and just go to different things and talk to people. And you're going to come away with a value that I don't think you're going to get. You're just not going to get anywhere else. To your point, 27% of all the people that graduate from college end up using that degree. I just think that, again, but that's where I come from. So I'm probably biased. Everything I learned by reading and watching, asking and learning. But again, I have been saying for 30 years, there are no stupid questions, just because I don't want to be too stupid not to ask the question.
Right.
So there's only stupid people, because you're too dumb to ask a dumb question.
Yeah.
Because there are no dumb questions. And if somebody thinks you asked them a dumb question, that's on them, not on you.
Again, fear of rejection.
Right. That fear of rejection. Yep.
And I would say, I've learned more in the last 4 or 5 years than I've learned throughout my entire life. And, it's just going through, having that business fail, and then going through the trauma of it, and then figuring out, well, you know what, I don't know enough, and seeking mentors, and just seeking the right mentorship has allowed me to be able to be here doing this podcast, learning from all these incredible people. It's invaluable, because every day I learn more than I knew the day before. And that is priceless.
Kessie, I have learned more from the multiple 7-figure mistakes I've made. And I've made more than one and more than two.
Right.
And we're talking a lot of money. And I've learned more from that than I did anything I ever did correctly. In fact, I manage my business coming to work every day as if I'm going to be out of business at the end of the day. Decisions I make today will reflect what the business is going to look like tomorrow. And I have to base those on experiences I had in the past. If we only look at the good ones, then we never learn anything. And you can't not only take the bad decision, but then fix it so much that now it becomes a good decision, right? Not just turn it back to equal, turn it back to a positive. Right. And so I think that lesson is not taught nearly enough. And that is that your business failed. We've all had them fail. I have failed spectacularly. I embrace all of those failures. Like, it's no fun. It's not no one likes doing it, but I'm just going to this is what I always tell myself. No matter how ugly it got, no matter how ugly it gets, no matter how much the stress is, and I've been in lawsuits and all the kinds of stuff that goes with the kind of business I've done. And I get, how do you do it? How do you get through? They ask my wife, how does he get through? And he's like, how does he make it? And she says, he just gets up. He just wakes up in the morning. He puts his feet on the floor. Because I crawled out of the gutter with a screwdriver hanging out of my back and my nose broken and ribs and the whole stories that I've told you, right? Compared to all of that, what can the world do to me today?
Right.
How bad can it be compared to the world that I came from? Or from a perspective's point, compared to the world that people have to deal with even today, right? I mean, our lives are so fantastic. So I think I'm going to add to my 20-year-old, what would I do? Perspective is king, because I have the superpower of looking back where I came from and going, what can you do to me? Doesn't mean that I'm not aggressive. Doesn't mean that it's fun to go through. Doesn't mean that I want to avoid it. It absolutely does. It just means that maybe it doesn't have quite the same power on me that it would someone else, because I've been hardened to it, but I also remember it. I don't forget it. And I don't dismiss it as my crappy childhood and mom hated me and the man was out working against me. I don't do any of that. There were good and there were bad. And I remember the good times and I remember the bad times. And I try to learn, and I am who I am in spite of where I come from, but also because of it.
And if I'm hearing you correctly, Jerry, I'm hearing embrace those failures, embrace them.
That's right.
And thank you for that, because free analysis to innovate and learn is the acronym FAIL that I'd heard many, many years ago. Free analysis is a free analysis. Like, you get an opportunity right there. Free analysis to innovate and learn, innovate and learn, innovate and learn. So that's profound, man. That's absolutely profound. And again, I know we're on the podcast, and being in podcast mode, while at the same time in my mind, I'm like, wait, we were having a meeting too, technically.
Yeah.
I want to, Kessie, this would be a brilliant idea, just because we can always connect it back to you. Would you mind, and Jerry, with your permission, to do a group text with me and Jerry?
Wait, you want
Fantastic.
We could definitely do that.
So I lost his email even getting on this podcast, so texts are better for me.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Let me show you guys something real quick. So you see how quickly I came up with this. So how do you deal with the stress? I keep these pictures on my phone. I've given these pictures out 1,000 times. Hopefully it shows up. But can y'all see that?
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
So tell me how bad your life is.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right? There's 2 pictures I keep. And this is, I keep it real.
No.
Yeah. Yep.
Those are at my fingertips whenever I want them. So when I feel like life sucks, something's gone the wrong way, I feel bad, I literally have those at my fingertips, because who am I?
Right.
And I think that kind of being humble and having some humility and some perspective is an absolute superpower. So much so that I carry that to constantly remind me. And I've texted those pictures out 1,000 times. And
it's funny about that, right? So I remember my dad is dying, and I go to the hospital, and I'm in my feelings, and I'm like, woe is me, right? Because I'm sad, I'm emotional, everything in between. And he had just had some tests done, and he's sitting on the ledge outside. And I walk, and he's like, what's wrong with your face? And I'm like, oh no, nothing, feeling sorry for myself. And he said to me, he's like, well, suppose you were me. How would you feel?
Yeah. Wow.
In that moment, I stopped. I'm like,
the old man hit you upside the head, didn't he?
Literally.
Here it is. He's the one that they just told, you're going to die. Yeah. And I'm the one sitting there feeling sorry for myself that I'm going to lose him.
I love it.
And he says, suppose you were me.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Ooh-wee.
So that's four words that change your life.
Change my life.
That's all it took. 4 words.
4 words. And when I feel sad or upset or angry about a situation, or even like I was telling you, the business failed and I was beside myself, I think to myself, I'm like, yo, I remember when he said, and I said, you know what? I can get up tomorrow. I can let I can be sad or upset, or I can do something different about what just happened.
Right.
But at
Yes.
least I have breath in me to be able to make that decision.
Yes.
He never had that opportunity.
That's right. Yes. Yep.
So as long as we're here and we're given another day to change whatever happened to us, then we shouldn't have any regret. We should just say, what am I going to do different tomorrow to make sure that tomorrow does not look like yesterday? And that's it.
And you talked about your partnership or the business failing. We talked about that briefly. I want to add along those lines. When I had that epiphany at 14, and it said, you're responsible for everything, I took that literally. And so I'm not very emotional. I had all of that beaten out of me as a child, right? So I don't have a lot of, I think I'm the most human person I know, because I over exaggerate empathy and sympathy,
Right.
because it's not something that I have naturally. But what it let me do, though, also, which is a superpower on top of the other one's perspective in particular, is that everything is my fault. And when I mean everything, everything. So I'll use it in business. I've had people lose me six figures. They made six-figure mistakes that cost me out of my pocket hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's my fault. I didn't put it didn't hurt my feelings. It didn't make me hate them or think different about them. What did I do that put them in that position that they could have that impact on me?
Right.
Wow.
You owned it.
You owned it. But it's easy to say, and it's very hard to do. So when a business fails, which I've had happen, what did I do wrong? It may not have been my fault. And in many times it's not my fault, but I don't ever care about anything. A car crashed into me. What did I do to put myself in that position? Why didn't I see that car coming? Why wasn't I paying attention that way? Because next time when I come up to that intersection, or an intersection just like it, I'm going to be looking in the one spot I didn't look at before when that car crashed into me. Right? Well, it's not my fault he crashed into me. Yeah. It's like people walking across the street, and, you have to slam on your brakes for them. And I always think, if I didn't slam on my brakes, you'd be dead. The cost to you is exorbitant. That doesn't seem, there's no value in that. Why would you want to do that? And yet they keep walking across the street and they never learn the lesson. I take that and say, I'm responsible for not getting hit by a car. So I'm not in a crosswalk. Even if the light's red, man, I got my head on a swivel. I am not getting hit by a car because I'm way too smart to get hit by a car that's blowing through a red light. It's not the red light's car, or the car that blows the red light's fault. It's my fault for putting myself in front of that red light. It's very in front of that car on that red light. It's very difficult to do, but it's a superpower when you can pull it off.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Jerry, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And AJ, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know our listeners are going to appreciate and learn so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
More to come.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. And Jerry, can you just tell our listeners where they can find you, the information?
Go to jerrybrazie.com, JerryBrazie, jerrybrazie.com. I'm on all the socials, but they can find all of my links there and everything you need to know about me right there.
Awesome. Awesome. And AJ, please share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you.
Yes, absolutely. So I will give you two. So you can go to the Epic Foundation, epicsouthflorida.org, EPIC, South Florida spelled all the way out, .org, or you can even find us on social media at Epic South Florida, again, spelled all the way out. And feel free to even follow me, the AJ Donaldson, no ego. I went to the U. So I like the fact that it was available. I took it. So the AJ Donaldson at the AJ Donaldson, spelled all the way out, DONALDSON on Instagram.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. One tool that I can truly recommend on how you can organize and execute systems is Notion. Notion allows you to seamlessly get information out of your head and into a centralized, organized space. Whether it's documenting processes, managing projects, or brainstorming ideas, Notion can be your go-to platform. As a special offer to our listeners, you can get started with Notion using the link in the episode description. By using our affiliate link, you not only support our podcast, but also gain access to free templates designed to kickstart your journey with Notion. These templates are specifically crafted to help entrepreneurs streamline their workflows and boost productivity. To take advantage of this offer, simply visit the affiliate link below to sign up and explore the free templates available in the resource section. Whether you're a solopreneur, managing a team, Notion can be the game changer you've been looking for. Stay tuned for more episodes where we dive deep into strategies, tools that can empower you as an entrepreneur. And don't forget to subscribe to Entrepreneurial Truth so you never miss an episode filled with actionable advice and insights. Thank you once again for joining us today. Until next time, keep innovating and scaling your business with purpose. Thanks again.